2017 to order, and if Michelle Bird would lead us in the budget.
We're doing the budget hearing first, and then the regular board meeting.
Oh, okay, so it is separate. I'm sorry. My apologies, everybody. Go ahead. I'm ready. Okay, here we go. So, do I have to call it to order?
No, you can just pass it your day.
Okay, so this is our budget hearing for December 5th, 2017. Jay, if you want to lay it on us.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Lewis, members of the executive team. I always open with "it's my pleasure to," but I'm not sure I'm going to start a budget revision number 2. It's my pleasure to, but I'm happy to be here to be able to share our required December adjustment with you. My apologies that our Director of Finance is unable to be with us here this evening. She's out ill, so you have to put up with me. I don't have as good a fun facts as she does. So, this is we always, with these budget hearings, we always have these really big numbers or these big charts, and the numbers are kind of difficult to see in this chart, but really the big key, there's 2 key number changes that are here. And what they boil down to is a reduction in our budget based on projected 100th day average daily membership, which is what our funding is calculated off of. So up until November this year, we were being calculated based on last year's 100th day, and it wasn't until November that the state was able to provide us a calculation based on a projected 100th day for this fiscal year. And so based on that projection, they're showing a budget reduction of about $456,000, which is represented in the summary chart from the maintenance and operations expenditures and the budget revision. But that's not the whole story, because we have the addition of about $153,000 in 1.06% teacher bonus pay that's coming from the state. And so those dollars have also been embedded here. So because those are sort of dollars that come in and then go right back out again, they're really not increasing the overall budget picture. So in reality, the shortfall is about $600,000 that we're adjusting for. And those adjustments were made primarily within instruction, administration, and operation and maintenance of plans. So because we do have carry forward funds, those adjustments won't cause us to be short of funds to operate this year, provided that they don't continue to balloon and increase, which is not what's expected. So if you look at the bottom of the total, I don't really have a good way to point at it here because I don't have my, oh, there's my mouse pointer. If you look at the bottom of the chart here, you'll see for revision 1, our fiscal year budget was at $37,758,077. When we jump forward to revision 2, it's been reduced to $37,356,115. And so that's not only a decrease from the original budget number, but it is also a decrease if you compare it to the column just to the left of it, which is the prior fiscal year amount of $37,553,637. So we're not only looking at our budget being reduced from the original budget that was proposed and adopted and revised with revision number 1, but it also is a budget number that is smaller than what our last year operating maintenance and operations budget was. And then we've already looked at these numbers, but these were just the numbers as we changed from the original adopted budget to revision number 1. That number stays the same. It's the $153,000 that's being allocated for the 1.06%. And so when we go into regular board session, there'll be 2 votes, one on adopting the revision itself, which is required statutorily by December 15th, and then the other one will be basically re-ratify the 1.06% dollar. And I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Any questions?
Any questions or statements from?
Any questions or statements from the public? All right. Do we need a motion to adjourn or just adjourn?
You can just adjourn.
Okay, so that budget hearing is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now,
Yeah.
Now I would like to welcome everybody to the regular board meeting, December 5th, 2017. And she's not, look, she's still there, Michelle Bennett. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the record reflect that all governing board members are present, and Annette Sexton-Ruiz is joining us telephonically. All right. I want to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting and remind the audience of the request to address board cards that must be completed and submitted to the board secretary if they wish to speak to an agenda item. Board policy provides for 2 cards, white cards to be submitted in order to speak to an agenda item, and blue cards to be submitted in order to speak during public comments. Policy also states there is a 5-minute maximum time limit per speaker. Due to the open meeting law, board members are not allowed to address items that are not on the agenda. If you do not want to address the board but wish to give your comments in writing, you can do so on a goldenrod sheet, and all members will receive a copy. Approval of the agenda.
Move the governing board approve the agenda as presented.
There's a motion.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. All right. Now, the item 2B, the adoption of revised number 2, 2017-2018 budgets.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Lewis, and members of the executive team, the administration would like to recommend, in compliance with both board policy and state statute, the adoption of the required December revision of the budget, which for us is revision number 2 this year.
I move the governing board adopt the revised number 2 total aggregate school district budget per ARS section 15-905 and specifically section 15-905E1 for fiscal year 2017-2018.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and now item 2C. This is for the 1.06 bonus or salary increase.
That we talked about in the hearing, that's just gratification.
I move the governing board adopt the revised number 2, 1.06% teacher salary increase per the requirements of laws 2017, chapter 305, section 33, fiscal year 2017-2018.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any public comments? Okay. That will bring us to our superintendent report. Dr. Lewis?
Well, good evening, everyone. Just wanted to remind us all that there are probably 19 or 20 December events where our children will be performing. We have arts and music and all sorts of crafts that we're celebrating that the students are doing as they reach their mid-year point. Secondly, we have just been informed that we are receiving 40 additional slots for preschoolers that we hope to have up and running by January, so we're very pleased with that expansion. We'll take every bit of help we can get to get our kids started. Then third, there will be the annual ASBA conference, December 14, 15. We're looking forward to that, and I know that we'll be sharing about our preschool success, and Ms. Castine, you and I need to talk about that, because you're hopefully presenting. Did you know that? Okay, there's no comment. I didn't just launch a grenade. You said yes. Okay, we can't discuss. Number 4, Pluto Quattro. The Kaboom Grant. Where's Amy? There you are. How you doing? Don't answer that. Okay, so
Ask me on Wednesday.
there's a $100,000 grant that we received. We have all these budget troubles, so every nickel is just so helpful. We're so proud of LCK, and thank you to you and Andy who got this going, where we're going to have over 200 volunteers in just a couple of weeks helping us, plus our foundation's helping us, and our Grand Canyon University, and Elevate Phoenix, and the Coyotes. We're just really looking forward to an exciting new playground. Thanks for all the hard work that it's taking to get that off the ground. Last, I would like to mention that the winter holiday begins after school on December 22nd, and kids resume school January 8th. So we hope everybody has a wonderful, restful holiday and winter break.
All right, governing board reports. Ms. Young, do you have anything to report?
Yes, thank you. This is our last meeting before the New Year, so everyone have a happy. And Saturday, December 16th, the Homestead neighborhood will have their annual luminarias. If you want a nice evening with family, friends, and walk around with all the luminarias and hit Candy Cane Lane, please join us. I did visit 2 schools with Amy. We visited Monte Vista and Gateway. And last governing board meeting, I went first and talked about them, so I'm gonna let her talk about them this time.
Mr. Zaragoza, do you have anything to report? No. Okay, now you get to report, Mr. Shepherd.
Thank you. So yeah, we visited Gateway and Monte Vista. Monte Vista first, so I'll talk about that quickly first. Thanks very much for your time. I do appreciate it. Like I said, I do feel like I learned something new at every school visit. We got to, by pure luck, I think, view some of what Monte Vista is striving for, which is an integrated arts experience, and that was really cool to see it in person and see what that meant, because I think it's something that's kind of hard to describe without seeing it in action. So that was great. That was one of the highlights for me at Monte Vista. We also visited Gateway, which just appreciate the time that we spent there, and just watching the transition, the new transition over there, and it was good. I also attended community council not too long ago, and a design team committee meeting this week, which was also very interesting.
And I have nothing to report. That brings us to approval of consent.
I move the governing board approve consent A through G in accordance with policy BEDD-R.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, now that takes us to item 6A, the benchmark data review.
And I want to comment that Ms. Sexton Ruiz is having some difficulty hearing, so I don't know if there's a sound wave that might be helpful, or if we could be more deliberate and purposeful in speaking into the microphone. Ms. Sexton Ruiz, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
There was a sound wave that's coming and going. So I hear a little bit, then nothing, then I hear a wave. So I don't know if there's a way to put, maybe it's the phones near the microphone or something, I don't know.
Yeah, there is. The microphone's on the phone.
And
That might be a,
I apologize, Ms. Sexton Ruiz. I didn't ask you for your board report. Did you have anything to report this time?
not that I can remember, my head's kind of stuffy. But I didn't even hear you, board report. I just heard Donna Lewis, that's all.
Okay, we'll try to talk into the microphones more. Okay, Dr. Dupin, are you ready? Okay.
So President Castine, fellow board members, Dr. Lewis, cabinet members, we are coming forward tonight with a presentation to share with you progress with our benchmark results. It's going to be a compilation of comparison from prior years to this year, some detail about the current year, and then we're going to close out with a team of supporters here who are going to share how they're utilizing their data. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Dubin.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome, Madam President, governing board members, Dr. Lewis, and executive team. This evening, our presentation has 3 parts. The first is we're going to examine the proficiency levels that are one of the outcomes of our benchmarks that we get. We're going to examine how those proficiency levels compare over time and how they compare across grade levels and across schools. The second part of the presentation will examine the levels of risk, and we've talked about levels of risk before, and what they basically do to help us target our instruction toward students' needs and relative to specific standards. And then, as Dr. Peterson mentioned, we will close with some practical reflections on the work that's being done at the schools to make sense of these data and to wrestle with the complex challenges of making standards come alive in a meaningful way and quickly enough to ensure that our students are able to reach proficiency as established by these assessments, and that they're able to achieve our true goal of adventurous learning in the process. So I would like to begin with a reference toward the fact that you've heard me speak a number of times about right-sizing our assessment system. So over the years, we've made adjustments in the kinds of item types that are in our benchmarks, when we get the benchmarks, and the way that items are developed. I'm pleased to let you know, just as we spoke about AZ Merit having 3 years of data now that we can use to compare, our benchmarks now have 3 years worth of data. We've kept the structure intact over these years, so now we're able to look and examine how student progress has changed over time using these tools in a more precise manner. As a reminder, our benchmarks are blueprinted to AZ Merit. The scores that are used, or the cut scores rather, that are used to label a particular score as proficient or highly proficient is aligned to the similar score that would be attributable to AZ Merit. So keeping that in mind, I would like to highlight that over the last 3 years, we see an interesting trend with our benchmark data. What you're looking at here is the English Language Arts data on proficiency levels for grades 2 through 8. Benchmarks are given to students in grades 2 through 8, not K1. When we examine this, what I want you to keep in mind is that our goal really is to move our students, I think I have a little pointer here somewhere, maybe, yeah. So our goal is to move students on this graph from right to left. That is to say, moving students out of minimally proficient, that's what the MP stands for, minimally proficient. We want to move students out of minimally proficient and toward proficient and highly proficient. So the profile of our learners typically is that we see high numbers of students at minimally proficient and then they gradually move. So what this shows us is that over the last 3 years, we are slowly increasing in English Language Arts the percentage of students at highly proficient and proficient. We're steady in that third bar, which is the partially proficient, notice the 0 change. And then we are decreasing students at minimally proficient. So that is indicative of some positive work. I also want to highlight here the blue bar and the difference between the blue and the orange. While we do have greater levels of specificity and exactness with these proficiency cut scores, that blue bar was the very first year that we could try to equate a benchmark score with a particular score in AZ Merit. So we have been working carefully to get that alignment just right, and so the lack of alignment is what attributes in part to the variability between the blue and the orange. So when I look at this, I really look closely at the difference between the orange and the gray, because that's where we have the greatest level of precise equivalency with the data. So again, the short story, moving students out of minimally proficient. Looking at the same data set for mathematics, we see a similar story in that we are increasing highly proficient, increasing proficient, increasing partially proficient, and decreasing slightly the numbers of students at minimally proficient. So in English Language Arts, we saw more of a distribution across proficient and highly proficient. This one, those minimally proficient kids are distributing more across the 3 groups. So the big takeaway looking at these is that proficiency levels of our students is getting higher. The challenging fact with this is that the amount of change that we're seeing and the rate of the movement from one category to the other is not fast enough. And that really is one of the big takeaways from this evening. And this mirrors what we saw in our school labels and the way that AZ Merit data were used balancing proficiency and growth. We tend to make growth. We tend not to grow at a rate fast enough to reach specific cut scores by certain points in time when you group all of our students together. This obviously is grouping kids 2 through 8 across multiple years, so it's a big grouping and not a super small grouping of students. So I can move on, or I can respond to any questions you might have at this point. Okay. So this next set, we're going to get in a little bit more precisely. I'll often talk about the research funnel. So we started out really high up here. We're moving down slightly. We're going to compare just within this year. We gave an interim benchmark, pretest, right when school started, about 2 weeks in August, and we gave another aligned assessment in October. So what we're going to look at now are the changes between those two assessments. So as you know from the appendices that we provided you, there are many, many, many ways to graph these data. But to simplify what you're looking at, we created a simple table to highlight the change. And what we're looking for is decreases or negative numbers in our minimally proficient category. There is some, there's moderate cause for an enthusiastic response to these data when you're looking at English language arts, because you can see second grade, a 23% decrease, third grade, a 25% decrease, and across the board, until we get to 8th grade, decreases in the percentages of students at minimally proficient. That is significant. We see those students then moving, we see increases, positive numbers, in many grades 2 through 6, partially proficient. Increases in all grade levels except for 8 proficient. We want to see positive numbers there. And then also positive numbers, highly proficient. The percentage went up for all grade levels in English language arts. Again, just the change from the pretest from August to October. So what this signifies to us is staying the course with some of the instructional and curricular changes that we've made in language arts, and continuing to closely monitor student progress and adjust instruction accordingly. So the consistency of this is a pattern that I would suggest we really want to see replicated in our own.
Dr. Dupin, so what we see here then is grades 2 through 5, some pretty, well, compared to 6th through 8th grade, much larger change. So for us lay people on the board, why is it such a lower change at the middle school?
There are several factors that play into that, and I'll highlight a couple. One is the fact that the standards themselves become increasingly more complex as the students grow older. Additionally, we know that our students who are older have had less time with the current set of standards. Now, most of our students at this point, I can't remember off the top of my head where we are in the progression of where our current kids were when the standards came in, but even I believe our 8th graders may not have had some of those foundational pieces at kindergarten and 1st grade. So we haven't pulled out of this set, who's been here for all 8 of those years and who's been here for 1 year. But we do know that those foundational experiences with this current set of academic standards are absolutely critical. It takes older kids longer to respond to instruction. There's some unlearning to do sometimes with new standards and new experiences. Those factors, we also know that transitions of teachers in the middle school can have an impact on student achievement levels as well. So I'm not sure exactly which one, but I know that they all factor in to grading this achievement profile.
I want to make a comment. So my daughter's an 8th grader right now, and she was at Creighton for a long time, and so I believe she did benefit from getting Common Core type instruction in the younger grades. She's doing really well in math. I mean, this is just one kid, obviously, but I visited Arcadia High School last week, and they have kids coming to them as 8th graders, some of them ready for trigonometry because they're busing them over from Ingleside, which was concerning to me, that we're nowhere close to that at all. I mean, it wasn't, I'm sure it's not a lot of kids, but they were very proud to be able to say that they're making that happen for their kids. So I'm just still really concerned that our 8th graders are just really far behind in math. And this obviously, you know, it shows it, I think, so.
This particular data set is a good reminder that the cumulative impact of language learning also plays a role. So whether that language is the language of English language arts, or whether it's the language of mathematics, by the time a student gets to 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, the complexity and density of that language is extremely present. And so that's a factor for our teachers. So whether we're dealing with foundational elements in the grade level standards or advanced mathematical concepts, the language piece is essential for us to address as we're examining misconceptions and moving our students forward. So to summarize as we continue forward, from these data, we also have an examination of what's happened in each school and each grade level. And one of the things I want to point out is that at all of our schools, in grades 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7, we saw decreases in the percentages of our students at minimally proficient. So again, something to feel encouraged by. These are encouraging data. At 6 of the 9 schools, we saw decreases in minimal proficiency in 6th grade. 6th grade is one of what I call one of our chronically underperforming grade levels that we speak about regularly. And in 4 of our 9 schools, we saw a decrease in minimally proficient in 8th grade. So some decrease, some change in that minimal proficiency. So lots of movement. So now we'll turn our attention to the mathematics data. In examining this, one of the things that stands out is that consistency that we saw in language arts, whole grade levels, whole schools, having decreases in the right places and increases in the right places is not as present in mathematics. So while at 2nd grade, we can celebrate a 41% reduction in the percentages of students scoring minimally proficient, we see an increase at 3rd grade in the numbers of students scoring minimally proficient. So this presents to us a significant challenge, and as you look across this data set, I'm not going to read each line of the table to you, but grades 3, 6, and 8 stand out as particular areas of needed focus at this point in the year. So we're really looking now at the instruction that is occurring between a month ago and the end of January, because that's when we're going to give the next interim benchmark. And these are significantly important areas to target.
Can we just go back? Obviously, I thought I was looking at mathematics on that first graph. The previous one.
This is math.
Right. So I'm still confused as to why 8th grade is so low in English and ELA, but this is better.
I'm just
looking at 8th grade. I mean, that's,
so we have 13% decrease in the minimally proficient kids. I'm sorry, that's a 13% increase.
oh, an increase,
Yeah.
okay, I'm sorry, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm confused.
Well, it's probably a trade-off between the two.
Yeah.
You have to pay attention to the plus and
Yeah,
minus.
okay. So that's.
A 1% increase in proficiency and a 3% decrease in high proficiency. So it's still, I would share.
Yeah, so it's interesting, it's 8th grade all around.
And that, there's a statewide trend to watch with our middle school dip. It also shows in the letter grades when you have a K-5 or a K-6 school, different than a middle school. When you have a K-8, it affects the letter grade at large. Yeah, so it's a statewide affect.
So again, looking at the schools and the grade levels, we're noting that at all schools, grade 2 had decreases in students scoring minimally proficient. 3 of the 9 were able to reduce minimal proficiency in grade 4. 7 of 9 reduced in grade 5. We're watching grade 5 closely. Last year, grade 5 was a celebration for us, an easy merit. These are different kids, but it's interesting to think about the curriculum and what's happening there, the instruction and what's happening there, and did what we learned about 5th grade 2 summers ago, and we applied to the rest of the grade levels, is that having an impact? And at what level? 8 of 9 of our schools, we were able to reduce minimum proficiency in 7th grade. So we're also curious about and when you see that at 7th grade, and then you look at 8th grade the following year, what is that? Again, this is just grade level performance. It's not kid movement over time and how does that child change. So just to highlight again, prioritization of 3, 6, 7. So that's our discussion on proficiency. So proficiency, aligned to the cut score, aligned to AZ merit. Now we're going to turn our focus to risk level projections. And this is the part that helps us, know that our growth is there, but that it is not fast enough to get us where we know we want our students to be relative to our goals. So we see the high numbers. So even though we have those big jumps in proficiency or reductions in minimal proficiency in 2nd grade, we see in ELA, English Language Arts, that high number of kids at moderate risk. And at this point, moderate risk is kind of a blunt instrument. Right? This includes a lot of students with a wide variety of learning profiles. So the discussion we're going to have when the team comes forward is really important because they're going to answer the question, what do you do with moderate risk at this point in the year? We can see the trend down 2 to 4, uptick in moderate risk at 5 and 6, and then a drop in 7, and then another increase. So when we come back, probably in February, what we're going to hope to see here is increases in our on-course and low risk, and a decrease in moderate risk, but we will see high-risk kids too, because with that 3rd assessment, we're going to be able to tease out more accurately the differences in that moderate risk category right now. But what we want to do is move as many of those kids in moderate to on-course and low risk as possible right now.
So just to make sure I'm understanding that, Dr. Dugan, at this point, we won't have those high-risk students identified until the next assessment.
That's correct, in a nutshell, yes. The assessment will give us that report after the next benchmark is administered. And I will say that practically speaking, we have lots of other information that allows us to know who's high risk right now. So I don't want to give them the misimpression that there's a lack of knowledge about where kids are. But to be true to the system, we will get that measure after the next benchmark.
Thank you.
So we see a similar scenario play out, but we do not see in math that same 7th grade pop of something to be excited about. Because when we're talking about proficiency, we there actually see our highest level of students at moderate risk. So that was all within the current school year. We then thought, very important to say, well, what does this mean? What do these current risk levels indicate relative to where we were at this time last year? So these data, this representation of the data now compares our risk levels current year to our risk levels at this time last year. And what we see in English Language Arts, again, are some pieces of encouraging news in that in 3rd grade, we have fewer students, slightly fewer, but fewer still, students at moderate risk. 4th grade, a decrease in moderate risk kids. 5th grade, there's a slight increase, but 6th and 7th also have decreases in moderate risk, which indicates some growth there, but again, not at the rate that we want to emphasize for our students. 2nd grade has a higher level of moderate risk. It is encouraging also then when looking at math to note that in 3rd and 4th grade we have decreases in moderate risk, as well as in 6th and 7th, and even 8th grade. Still, overall, we're challenged with proficiency at these grade levels. But we are bringing down, at this point, according to these data, the levels of at-riskness for not passing on AZ merit. So at this point, I'm going to, I think, step aside and invite the team. We have a cross-section of the district tonight the principal from Papago, Mr. Geyer, Samantha Rodas, instructional coach at Mackin School. She's spoken to you before about mathematical practices and instruction in the classroom. And then a wonderful second grade classroom teacher, Christine Shader from Excellencia. All of them will be talking about what we now are wrestling with relative to these data. So, Mr. Geyer.
Madam President, members of the board, executive team. Wrestling is a term that we use quite a bit sometimes in academics, but I want to tell you that we're really happy to have that ATI tool. It gives us right now data that we can use, and as Dr. Dupin pointed out, we can see how the district is performing relative to last fall when we took the benchmark. In Papago, we saw an enormous pop for 4th grade in ELA and math. Similar improvements in 5th and 7th grade student achievement. So we saw that the very same week that the students took those ATI quizzes. The ATI tool gives us the data for our grade levels, our teachers to work as teams, to look at the their classroom standard, also their grade level standards that they need to pull up for those moderate risk students to achieve at the on-course level. This year we wanted to add something though. In addition to the class and the grade level standards that we identified as needing extra instruction, we wanted to identify the students who on merit last year showed a lot of growth, but still weren't quite achieving at the levels that we wanted them to achieve. So we were able to pull out some of those particular students who had high growth but weren't achieving at those levels and identify the specific standards for those students in particular that we could spiral back in for those students to help them not only continue to show the growth but get achievement also. So in some cases the standards are the same as the whole class standards that we identified, but in some cases we find some differences and it allows us to target for those particular students. The teachers can design added instruction for those students, some tutoring that happens after school. Sometimes they bring them in during lunch and have some extra time with them there. Sometimes before school they have frequent checks for understanding with those students to gauge their progress as we move towards the January benchmarks. And this instruction, while during the time it happens kind of isolated for those students that we targeted, it informs whole class instruction. So it carries out into everything that's happening in the classroom. And to tell us more about how our leaders and learners are supporting those kids in the classroom, we have Coach Sam Rodas from Mackin.
Hi, it's nice to be here tonight. It's my first time speaking to you in my new role as an instructional coach. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about what coaches are doing to support our teachers and our students with this data that we're looking at. So we do a process that we call action planning at all of our schools. And when we action plan, we're looking at the same data that you're looking at, but at the student level, right, for the individual teachers, and deciding what that means for teachers and their instruction. So as a coach, what I do is I work with teachers to understand the reports in ATI. There's one report in particular that we look at often that shows the different risk groups of students. So it'll show those moderate risk, low risk, and on-course students, and then show which standards the ATI says that we should focus on to move those students to the next lowest risk level. So this is great when you're a teacher and you're looking at a sea of standards that you need to focus on, right? Where do I have the most bang for my buck, right? Where can I really focus in to bring those students out of that risk group? So I help teachers with the other coaches to analyze that data and see, like, okay, where are we going to have the most impact here? And for which students, right? Which students need support with which standards? We want to be really specific with our interventions. And those interventions can look really differently, and Christine's going to talk about some different interventions that you might have in place in the classroom. Like Jeff said, Mr. Geyer said, we also help teachers to identify those focused students, particular students that are on the cusp of high growth or high achievement, so that we can put in place particular interventions for those students to help them reach their goals. Additionally, as a coach, we really try to help teachers identify learner-centered problems, moving beyond looking at that standard and saying, well, they just didn't get it, right? Well, the students just didn't get it, or they didn't read the question carefully. I know my kids can do it, right? And sometimes they didn't read the question carefully, but we need to identify what the problem is, what misconceptions those students have, so that we as teachers can design interventions to really help them understand that concept. And if it is a close reading strategy, they didn't read the question carefully, then what intervention do we need to put into place to help the students understand how to do that process? So my role is to help those teachers to create those kind of learner-centered problems for their interventions. I also support teachers in finding resources for those interventions. We know teachers already have a million things on their plate, right? So we want to make sure that they're not off on Pinterest trying to find something to do in their classroom, but they're actually using our curriculum resources that we've invested a lot of dollars in training into, right? We have level readers for Wonders that are fantastic to support our interventions. We have the Math Pathways and Pitfalls program that offers excellent math interventions. So making sure that teachers understand how to use those resources and where they're appropriate to support their interventions is something that, that my role includes. Also following up. We know that if you have a million things on your plate, if that's not something that's on your radar, then it's going to fall off. So as a coach, I meet individually with teachers to follow up and ask questions about how's your action plan going, what support do you need, and also come into the classroom to observe during those intervention times. Sometimes that might look like modeling an intervention, and sometimes it might look like a reflective conversation afterwards. Also following up on their teacher-created assessments to see how students are making progress on those identified standards. So that is my role as a coach in supporting the action planning process so that we can move students forward with this data that we've been seeing. And now Christine Chater from Excellencia is going to share the teacher's role in the action planning process. In a moment.
Thank you.
Great. Hello, my name is Christine Chater. As Sam let you know, I'm really happy to be speaking here with you today. For my first time. I would like to build off of what Sam said and take it more into the classroom level and tell you what I do with those standards once I have identified which standards there are that can really support my students' growth in both reading and math. So often that looks like making sure I'm targeting standards that support a lot of the other standards, because in this point of the year, if my students can achieve those, then later, when I do my next action plan, after we have more data, I can help them achieve some of the other standards that I see. This, as Sam said, can be a pretty daunting task when I see 70-some% of my students falling at minimally proficient. However, the coaches have helped us a lot to narrow down which standards will actually benefit our students. Part of that is also just determining what kind of misconceptions my students have. So, for example, in math, right now my students are really struggling with understanding the relationship between adding, subtracting, counting, and like parts and wholes. So what I do with that is I make sure with our curriculum from Engage New York, we focus on the warm-ups within those lessons that really target those kind of standards and those misconceptions. They're also struggling with, can they use a number line to add and subtract? And that actually fits into a lot of the strategies that we're working on right now during our whole group lessons. So what I'll do is just emphasize number lines in some of my lessons while we're working on different strategies. Not only during whole group do I make sure to emphasize these, but also in planning for my small group instruction. So after we have our whole group lesson, usually that looks like looking at that 70-some% of students that are still struggling with that standard and thinking, what kind of activities can I do with them that will help build their number sense. So this looks like 2 or 3 times a week pulling that small group out and talking to them about that. And then I also have an aide in my classroom. So I've planned for some of the students who are right on the verge of achieving that standard to meet with her so that they have more small group time to work on that particular standard. So during reading, I'll just give an example. My students are thoroughly struggling with understanding what the questions, some of them understanding what the questions are asking them. So this can be a huge, basically, what word am I looking for? Obstacle, thank you. A huge obstacle to them when they go to take a test. So in my classroom, one of the things we do during our guided reading groups where we use those leveled readers, we actually address the standard at that student's level. So say the student is reading at a first grade level, or a second grade level, or maybe even third. So we target their reading level, but also target the second grade standard. So we say, hey, how can I help them look into the text and pull that evidence and identify what the question word is asking them? So basically, by fishing out these standards from the data and having a conversation about their misconceptions, as teachers, it just builds our awareness of which kind of small groups we need to organize, and also what we need to emphasize during our whole group teaching. And I couldn't do that without the help of my coaches, of course. So, does anyone have any questions?
Well, thank you all. So in conclusion, just to emphasize, we do see a pattern of things to be encouraged about. There are factors about our achievement profile right now in both English language arts and math, in both proficiency and levels of risk that we can celebrate. And when working to address a sea of red as a classroom teacher, those celebrations are essential. However, we need to remain vigilant around the rate at which our students are growing so that we can reduce the risk for failure.
I would like to comment that, I am beating the drum at the state level about why grade levels, which are somewhat invented terms based on norms of shared 10-year-olds across the state, or shared 9-year-olds across the state, or shared 11-year-olds across the state, that what we lack in the state is an ability to determine where our kids really are outside of that normed grade level. And ATI, the benchmark assessment that we use, mirrors that limitation. So, I am asking questions of some other folks about where they might be getting data that shows where a child really is in their readiness, so it's not a forced train that they're supposed to be on if they're genuinely not at that baseline. So I just want to make that comment that it's absolutely worth exploring, assessing where a child really is, not just according to grade level.
So back on according to the grade levels, that this is what we have. Dr. Dupin, is it fair, I'm just looking at the size of these bars. But as a district, it appears that we're doing better with English language arts compared to math. Is that a fair assessment?
I think that's a fair generalization, yes.
Well, I just want to say thanks for the update on where we are. I think the benchmark data is important for us to look at and to monitor, and I appreciate you giving us the state of our academics at this point. Thank you.
Big appreciation to this team for really trying to bring a practical voice to the discussion.
Yeah, I appreciate it very much. It kind of helps understand what's going on in the classroom, and I appreciate that, I think if I understood it correctly, that she said she's kind of using maybe second grade, questioning, yeah, so that's good that.
Well, and based on what you were saying, Donna, it also, or Dr. Lewis, I'm sorry, we also, in my class, I try to make sure that the data that I'm getting, to make sure I'm putting them into the correct groups, is not solely based off of this grade level data. It's also based off of something in our curriculum that assesses which sounds they in particular need to work on. So it's a combination of different data points. What helps.
Yeah, thank you. And Dr. Dupin, when is the next benchmark? Are there two more?
The benchmark window is January 22nd through the 25th, and that is our last benchmark. We do administer a post-test at the end of the year in May.
Okay.
And that's used to close the loop on all of this. But one more benchmark to really give us that actionable data and time between January and April when we take it from there.
One thing too, I was looking at the appendices here, and just looking at the big blue bar on the far left, which is BPA. I think I just want to say that I appreciate all the work that our teachers and our coaches and our principals do. Because it's not just the standards that we're up against here. You know, if you look at these appendices, and some grades are better than others, but if you look at these appendices and see eight of our schools look very, very similar, and we have one that kind of runs away with it every year. So it's disappointing to me that the legislature, the State Department, and whoever won't acknowledge the socioeconomic drivers here and how that truly affects learning, because our teachers are doing the same things in BPA as they are, and perhaps, and this is, you know, I think you said you're from BPA. Perhaps our teachers in the south of Indian School are doing even more because of the other things that exist for our kids, you know, because I see it every day with homeless students, foster kids, kids who are involved in domestic disputes and all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, I would just like for us all to remember too, that we have some really fantastic things happening and fantastic instruction. And there's a lot of social services that are not being filled in by our legislatures that kind of speak to these low numbers. So I'll get off my soapbox, but thank you again for all of your hard work.
I agree with Jamie.
I mean, I agree too. I do want to point out that if you look at math though, BPA is not that much higher than the other schools. You know? It should be, you know, according to that theory. Totally agree with you. But that's just my concern. Among many concerns. But thank you very much. I do, and I certainly agree. You guys are all working very hard, and it sure sounds like we're on the right track. I mean, so.
Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, that will take us to the Creighton School presentation.
President Castine, board members, Dr. Lewis, Executive Cabinet. We are delighted to welcome a Creighton team, a large Creighton team here tonight for their presentation. They're going to be sharing their data and some of the shifts that they'll be making. We know that there's a lot of other exciting things that are happening at Creighton, and it is our plan to come in the future with that information. But tonight we're going to be focusing on what are some of the significant changes they've been making on their campus.
President Castine, governing board members, and Dr. Lewis, Executive Cabinet. Thank you for the opportunity to share the great things that are happening at our school. You have received this tonight, an extensive set of data on benchmarks. So today, it is our job to share with you our challenges, our successes, and our next steps. And I'm not doing it by myself because I'm only one. We're doing it as a team approach because that's what we do, how we do things in Creighton. So today, one of the things that we would like to share with you is some of the analysis of the data, and I'm going to bring. Sorry, it will be helpful if everybody is able to see. Thank you, Jay. Alright, so some of the things that we're going to share is some of the data analysis, our reflection towards academic progress, alignment with our action plans, and data implications and next steps. First of all, let me remind you that at Creighton Elementary, we have this huge lofty goal, and our vision is there is no better place to learn. In order for us to achieve that lofty goal, we have our mission statement. And our mission statement, it's all about inspiring and challenging our students to be lifelong learners who are responsible, productive citizens, and we do that by example. A little bit of our school, we're about 675 students. We have the second largest population of VLL students in Creighton Elementary District. And that's important to know because as you just saw on the data, we're doing better on ELA than in math, and that's because for the longest time, our profile of our students, that's where the highest need in acquiring language skills and proficiency in reading and writing. We have 26 wonderful homegrown teachers, 3 per grade level, except in first grade. In first grade, we have two large classes of first grade. And this year, we only have to hire 8 new teachers. This is huge for us because 2 years ago, we hired 17 teachers. Last year, we hired 14, and for this year, 18. So we're in a positive trend of retaining our talented teachers. As I said before, you have seen all the entire district data and aggregates. Today I want to show you 2nd grade to 8th grade on ELA on the benchmark just for Creighton Elementary School. And you can see a sea of red, but you can also see a progression in that it goes from 2nd all the way to 5th grade, and you see how our students, the longer they stay with us, they're showing progress. And we know that because it takes time to acquire those language skills. It takes time to replace the teachers that we didn't have and to get better at how we teach each one of the standards. When it comes to math, we have some of the same patterns. However, once you go into 6th grade, the concepts are getting more complex and their students struggle to do that transition. We have a similar transition when they go to 2nd grade to 3rd grade, but it's more evident when it's in 6th grade, and then you can see the kind of level established as they go in 7th and 8th grade. I am not going to overwhelm you with the entire spectrum of kinder 8th grade. Instead, I want to share the challenges and the successes of 2 specific grade levels, and that's the targeted grade levels of 2nd and 3rd grade. Last year, at the beginning of our 2nd semester, I came, like all of the principals, and I told you these were the struggles that we were having at Creighton Elementary. And I talked to you about 2nd grade. And I said that in those grade levels, there were three challenges that we were having. The first one is that the alignment in the classroom instruction was not meeting the student needs. The second one was that we didn't have consistency in implementing and reinforcing classroom rules and procedures. So the behavior can cover the instruction, teachers are overwhelmed, the students are not learning, and then we go into hiring new teachers when placing because nobody's showing progress, nobody's enjoying in school. Some of the interventions that we did was coaching. It included observing in the briefing with the students, planning with the teachers, not only on their weekly meetings, but also on an individual basis, before school, after school, modeling, mentoring, observing other peers inside our school and also across the district. And then we make sure that every single professional development that we had was in alignment with our goals and to meet these initiatives. I also at that time I came to the board and to the executive cabinet and I said, I need help because I'm not meeting these students' needs. And one of the things that was approved by you, and it made an impact, and you'll see in the next graph, is that we had reading interventionists, another teacher, coming into those 2nd grade classrooms and intervening in small groups all day long for math and reading into those to close those learning gaps. This is in addition of having students in interventions. Now, you're going to see in the next slides from this one all the way to the end, in the corner, that there's a little box that says IAP and then a letter and a number. So the IAP stands for the Integrated Action Plan, and the letter P is for principal, and this specific graph is to establish the challenges that we have that are correlated to principle number 2. Principle number 2 is effective teachers and instruction. Okay? I want to point out because everything that we do in our school is in alignment to our school goals, which is bottom line, meeting our students' needs. Now, these 2 graphs that you see, one is for ELA and one is for math. Let me tell you how to read this graph. Do not compare the 2 columns that you have next to each other. The first column is last year pre-assessment, and then the second column is this year pre-assessment. Then the other 2 columns is the growth that the students achieved from the pre-assessment to benchmark 1. Okay? So I'm going to start with reading. So if you see on the first one, you can see that, as I said, we discovered 3 problems in that second grade, and that's why it became a targeted grade level for us. So you can see that the students in the pre-assessment last year, there were 56% of them minimally proficient and 26% partially proficient. After they took, after several weeks of instruction and they took the test, you see that the number of students in minimally proficient increased to 64 and the partially proficient to 21. To 21, it was reduced. But you see a regression. Now, this year, with the new team that we have, brand new team that we have, you can see that even though we started with a larger number of students in minimally proficient, 76, after 5 weeks of instruction with the new team and the interventions with the collaboration of the teachers that we'll get to share with you tonight, we reduced the minimally proficient students from 76 to 47%. So, once again, you can see what happened from 4% highly proficient to 15% highly proficient, from 14 proficient to 21 proficient, and then the partially proficient from 6 to 18. Now, are we to a point that we can say, we're done, our job's it? No, but we're on the right track. And knowing the challenges that we had last year, we started with the proactively approach of saying, who are we going to put in those teams? And we brought one of our veteran teachers from 3rd grade down to 2nd grade. So she will be the liaison for the new team members. And then we, out of something challenging us, reducing on Title I funds and losing one of our reading interventionists, we put that reading interventionist in 3rd grade because we knew that the challenge was greater in 2nd grade. So now that we know how to read the graph, I want to see the same effect when it comes to math. Now, for this year, so I'm going to skip last year because I want to see this year pre-assessment. You can see that 96% of our 2nd graders scored on the pre-assessment, first week of school, and minimally proficient. After the first quarter of instruction, we reduced that number of minimally proficient from 96 to 72%. Okay. Once again, we're still a lot of red, but we're working on it, and this is a good indication that we're having the interventions and the action plans and the strategies ready. And most important, the right people on the right grade levels. We do the same for 3rd grade because these are last year 2nd graders. So you can see that at the beginning of the year, for ELA, 93% of the students scored in the pre-assessment at a minimally proficient. After a few weeks or first quarter of instruction, we were able to reduce that number to 76%. Still, 76% is high, but going from 93 to 76, once again, it's an indication that we are on the right track. We're having the right conversations, we're targeting interventions, and we're seeing that result. So we haven't stopped that. We took the data from the benchmarks, we have our action plans, and we see some indications of our interventions are in instruction. Now, you may want to go to naturally to see 3rd grade students, last year 2nd graders into math, and you can see that here we haven't seen the same success. And one of the things that we have encountered is that these students are really struggling with place value. When it comes to 3rd grade, it goes into multiplication and division. Well, when it comes to place value, if you still are confusing into your division facts and your subtractions, your subtraction and addition facts, and you're still confusing your tens with your hundreds, you're not going to be successful in multiplication and division. And that's one of the biggest obstacles for the students to show that growth in math. Since I told you that our goals and our action steps are solely aligned into our integrated action plan, I want to tell you that and remind you that our goals for the year are those lofty goals: improving instruction for all, restructure RTI program, making sure that everybody gets the intervention that they need, increase the language acquisition skills, allowed for collaboration with the teachers, because the teachers are the ones that are achieving this. Not the principal, the teachers in the classroom with the students. And our job as principals is to create that culture of success, not just among the teachers, but also among the parents and among the students. All of those goals and no narratives comes to as simple as we need to engage students in the learning. We need to ensure that we ask them the right questions and asking the students the academic vocabulary necessary to respond to those questions. And we need to implement the mathematical practices, which is the mind shift to go into critical thinking and problem solving. Now, as I told you before, this is a team approach. And in Creighton, we believe that, and we take that growth mindset very seriously. I'm, as a 4-year principal, every year I expand my skills, or I believe that I'm expanding my skills, and I'm doing things better. I may not be sharing with you super innovative or new things, but I'm here to tell you that every year I self-reflect with my coach, with the cabinet, and I said, what can I do better? If it's not something new, what else can I, in what way can I improve what I'm currently doing? For my teachers, for my families, for my students. At this time, I'm going to ask Ms. LeBron to join me over here, because as in a team approach, everybody has a role. So our role as the instructional leaders of the campus, our first step is we establish and share a vision for learning. We want to make sure that everybody understands what's a vision and our mission statement, and that everybody can articulate some way, somehow, what is our goal. Another thing that we do is we're all about, we have this lofty goal. What is the system, the plans, the strategies, the process that we're going to teach the teachers and the students to say, in order to achieve this goal, we're going to go through A, B, C, D. So that's our goal, to come with those logistic things, to preserve time for collaboration, to ensure that when we call a meeting, it's truly a necessary meeting and not just for the fun of meeting, not like next meetings. We also provide support to teachers and staff, and support comes in different ways. One of the biggest things that our teachers also ask for help is behavior. And for behavior, we're going to share, Ms. LeBron is going to share some of the things that we have done to alleviate those concerns.
Hi, good evening. So as a district, we have really been talking about restorative practices and really looking at those and putting those into place. So we have spent a lot of time teaching our teachers about adverse childhood experiences and how those experiences impact how a student learns and behaves at school, and if they're not behaving, how is that impacting their learning? And teaching our teachers to be empathetic to the situations, and how do we use those and change the mindset and how we do business for our students. So we have put into place with the partnership last year through Phoenix Children's Hospital, Yoga for Classrooms. This is not a roll out your yoga mat in the classroom, and these are all things that they can do at their desk or standing up, very quick techniques that kiddos can do, led through the teacher to kind of help them recenter themselves. We went back to our weekly meetings, looking at our data through our grant application for our JPO. We need to go back to those meetings and really give students the opportunity of safe space to share concerns and what's bothering them before things escalate. And then also when there is a behavior and they are sent to the office, how do we teach them replacement behaviors going forward? How do they fix their wrong and then learn from it, so hopefully it doesn't happen again and we start to minimize the reoccurrences of the same situations, because we know if the kiddos are in the classroom, then they have greater opportunities to learn.
And that includes also trainings with the parents. Any training that we do for the staff members, I do a similar version for my parent connections for the parents. So if we talk about AC Merit, the parents get an AC Merit version of it. If we talk about PBIS and restorative practices, the parents get something similar and they get to experience. One of the most important bullets that is at the end over there is to develop leadership among grade levels and departments, and that's through a series of meetings. That's through being honest and saying, here's our survey, what's going well, what we need to improve, what are something that we need to celebrate. So we did one in first quarter. This week, teachers are going to get the one for second quarter and truly making them anonymous, so they are able to express whatever without fear of retaliation. Because I need to know, if we don't know what's going on, where they need support, what something that we need to revisit, then we're going to be in parallels. And we need to be united for the students. Now, as I said, this is a teach approach. Our roles go directly to principle one, which is effective leadership. Are we still effective? we're on our way to go over there. Now, I'll invite the rest of the team to join us over here and our teachers, because these are truly the warriors that see the teachers, the students every single day. So I really, they have great things to share. And the first one to share is Ms. Kendrick, the veteran teachers who came from 3rd grade to 2nd grade.
Good evening, and thank you for letting me come here tonight to speak to you. I wanted to share with you a couple of things about 2nd grade. We have, I believe, a very successful team. We collaborate, we like each other, we work well together. And as we know, a team that doesn't work well cannot work well for the kids. We work with the RTI teachers to understand how we can also change how we're teaching to better meet the needs of those kids that are struggling with reading. We work with our SPED teachers to help us change the way we teach so that those kiddos also meet their goals for IEPs. We use our data from benchmarks, we use our data from CF check for understandings, we use our data from incidental notes when you're working with a small group to adjust how we teach. So that really helps us that we can be more successful. Not only are we focusing on all those things, but we're also focusing on growth. And when we're focusing on growth, we want to look at some of the things and tweak them a little bit so that we can help the kiddos. And we celebrate it. For example, in class, Maria was struggling with just basic addition facts. But Maria kind of got into the groove with Rocket Math, which is a program that we use, and she's succeeding now. Another kid is Isai. Isai's RTI, struggling with reading. He goes out, works on his phonics skills, comes back, small group works on it, and all of a sudden he got polite. He's like, this is a sound that makes the word, that turns the word into a sentence, that makes a paragraph, and he's reading. He's like, look, teacher, this is what this says. So we're seeing success, and it's wonderful.
Hello, my name is Maria Ramirez and I'm a 2nd grade teacher. I'm new to the district and I'm very happy to have the opportunity to be part of this community district school and 2nd grade team. By collaborating with my 2nd grade team, like Ms. Kendrick mentioned, reading interventionist coaches and supervisors, we are teaching using different strategies to have all of our students make progress in all school subjects. For example, in our 2nd grade team, we plan together, we share resources, we are there for each other. We frequently progress monitor our students and use the data to develop our next steps to teach our students. We strive to have our students feel welcomed at school, appreciated, respected, and overall for them to want to come to school and learn. A challenge for me is just getting used to a new school. But other than that, thanks to my amazing and caring mentor, Ms. Barrera, 1st grade teacher whom I met through the Creighton New Teacher Mentor Program, outstanding 2nd grade team, positive administrators, and welcoming staff, I am adapting quicker than I was expecting. So, and again, I'm very thankful for the opportunity to be here and use my teaching skills to teach my amazing students. Thank you.
My name is Amanda, and I'm a new 3rd grade teacher, just like Maria. One thing that this year our team does really well is we communicate very well with behaviors, such as we all have the same behavior expectations as well as consistent consequences. But we also communicate academically as well with doing planning outside of like our scheduled planning times. One challenge that we do have as 3rd grade teachers this year is having to backtrack on the standards that are like the building blocks for 3rd grade. So having to constantly go back and reteach things.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lorene Hanley, and I want to say thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm a reading interventionist at Creighton School, and one of the things that we're doing this year for positive growth is we're using a different set of language warm-ups, and they focus on sentence structures and specific skills. And what I really like about these particular warm-ups is that it's teaching the students how to be critical thinkers. It's letting them look at a sentence and say, what's wrong with that? And have them debate. Oh no, that needs a question mark. Oh no, that's not a question. So it's really encouraging that, and I really like it. And it's also a quick use of our time to address those specific skills. The other thing that we're doing is that we're implementing those academic conversation enhancements like Eliminate It, which my kids love. And it's been a lot of fun, and they break up into groups. They have 4 boxes. Sometimes the question is, which one doesn't belong? And once in a while, the kids come up with something other than I had planned, and they think out of the box. And so that has been really exciting, and the conversation is really stimulated, and they're learning how to have polite academic conversations with each other, and I think that's really cool. The other thing for the challenges, like Mr. Carvajal said before, we don't service as many students as we did last year. And the other one is that for me, when we go in the classroom to push in, to have our little table and everything, sometimes it's difficult to hear 3 teachers teaching in the same room. That is a little daunting sometimes. So we're learning how to, lower our voices and have really low indoor voices. So anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. And one of the things that we're trying differently, since because of funding, we went to 3 to reading interventionists to 2. That's why the reason. Last year we served over 200 students. This year with only 2 we're serving 110 students. So, and we're doing K4 instead of K8. We're running super out of time, so sorry, but one of the things so you don't get to hear from our coaches today, but our students have a role, and some of the things, the expectations that we have from our students, the ones that are listed over here, they need to do their best, they need to celebrate their successes, they need to have their own goals, and also they need to grow. We have a video of our student that is only 2 minutes, but before I share with you the video, I'm going to share with you this article, and that's for you. I'm not going to read it to you. Once you get it, I'm just going to ask you to go to the 3rd paragraph that says, change the experience, change the brain. So the article talks about all of the distresses that low socioeconomic students go through, from violence, from limitations that they have, and some of the things that might be perceived as misbehaving or a lack of intelligence is just side effects of poverty. And I know that Ms. Castillo was talking about that. So what we're trying basically to do, not just at Creighton Elementary, but over Creighton District, is we want to change the experience for every single kid, because we know if we change that, we're going to change their brain. And it might not be in 1 year, but if they stay with us, they will change it as long as they are with us. So let me see if the video works. Sorry, no sound, but as I said, it went over the time. But this is Pedro. Pedro was a 2nd grade. He a 2nd grade student last year. He arrived to our school at the beginning of the year. He went to having over 30 office referrals throughout the year. Every single day he was not a good place for him, whether in classroom, the playground, or the cafeteria, electives. He was always fighting or not following procedures. Last semester, on the month of March, his 17-year-old brother committed suicide. If that was not traumatic enough, 3 weeks later, her mom overdosed. The family remained with us. We, of course, have adopted the family from everything close. Counseling services, they live with the dad. This with the new teacher, like Amanda, and the other 3rd grade team. He's one of the students that immediately on day 1 was put on interventions. 0 office referrals. He can be anywhere. He loves school, and the end of the video, which I'm going to make sure that you get it, that's what he says. I love school. And I said, why is different this year than the other, than last year? And he said, my teacher.
I'll try it.
Microphone down by
You were having a lot of problems in second grade. Can you tell me more about that?
I was hurting on the students. I was not respecting others. I was saying appropriate stuff. And I was hurting other students, punching. And I just found out Mr. Neal was the best teacher in my 3rd grade classroom because he helps everybody. He lets us go around and helping others, and he lets us do stuff at home. You look at the moon and then you draw it on your paper, and he lets us do group work.
What's your favorite subject, favorite class?
My favorite class is Mr. Neal.
And he teaches you what subject?
Math and minus and divide.
And what's one thing you've been working really hard in getting better at?
My behavior.
Do you like school?
Yes, I love school.
Thank you, Pedro. So that's what we're trying to change. We're trying to change the experience for every student that comes to our door. Sorry for the time. That's what happened when you go first. So, there's one principle to not do this. Stick to the time.
And you see the passion that you have.
Mr. Carpal, just a quick question. Have you, I don't know if you've gotten together with Dr. Lauren or Dr. DeMar about the AARP volunteers that come in?
No.
Since you're down an interventionist, I know that's been successful
Yes.
for them, so
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
And every time I go to your school, your kids just seem so happy to be there.
Thank you.
And they're not fake.
The 2 new teachers were identified. It's nice to meet them 2 out of 7, so we're hitting pretty good odds here. I was just wondering, they're new to Creighton, but have they had experience in other school districts? So they're not new to teaching, they're just new to,
This is my 5th year teaching 2nd grade.
thank you.
This is.
And we stole the talent from Murphy.
This is my 3rd year teaching. I taught 3rd grade last year and 2nd grade the year before in a charter school.
Okay, thank you.
It's nice to meet all of you.
It's nice to meet you all. Also, in my past life, when I worked for money, I found some of the children who were, that went through abuse and maltreatment and various other problems in their life, instability basically. I was talking to a psychologist once because I couldn't figure out why this child was a client of mine, scored so high in school when his life was just chaos. And he said some students, if they find the right match in school, view school as a sanctuary. It's a safe place, somebody cares about them, and they will excel there rather than, and it's to get away from the chaos at home. And it seems like you have provided that for this young man. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any other questions or comments or anything from the department?
Thank you for being an attractive, safe place for our entire community and your heroic efforts every day, in every way.
Okay, that will take us to item 8A, personnel.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Lewis, and executive team. Sorry, I was waiting for Dr.
Lugo,
Lugo.
like, Susan.
Yeah, and, you know, I got nothing from over there.
Thank you, Creighton teachers. Have a good night.
So it is my absolute pleasure to bring forward a recommendation for our Director of Facilities and Transportation of the school district to be effective December 18th. Mr. Scott Wells, who we're recommending, went through a rigorous process that included an interview panel with broad representation, homework assignments, finalist interviews, kind of the gamut that we tend to run people through. He has a broad range of experience, including his most recent experience of 8 years at the Madison School District as the Director of Transportation and Maintenance. But the coolest thing, in my mind, there's a lot of cool things about Mr. Wells, but the coolest thing is he spent 5 years at Creighton School District prior to that, so we're welcoming him back to the family upon board approval. So I would like to recommend Mr. Scott Wells as our new Director of Transportation, Director of Facilities and Transportation.
I move the governing board approve Mr. Scott Wills as the Director of Facilities and Transportation for Creighton School District, effective 12/18/2017.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Would you like to come on up, Mr. Wells, and say hello? Tell us a little bit about yourself. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What?
Oh, thank you. Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Lewis, Mr. Ham. Great. I got it right?
Yeah.
Same doctor, all I'm going through my mind. What a great opportunity it is to come back to Creighton. And I do recognize some of the folks, I know Donna was here when I was here on the board, I mentioned. But I had thought about this for a while, and some of our administrators here I had several conversations with, and I thought this is a great opportunity to come back and do some great things. And I look forward to the 2018 and the exciting things we're going to do in transportation and facilities. And I have to tell you, I got the best welcome ever coming in as principal to get Christmas lists. Things to do. So we've got a lot to do the upcoming year, and I'm very excited to be here.
Oh,
Thank you.
welcome.
Congratulations.
Yeah. That was our principals having good humor, saying, hi, we're glad you're here, here's what we need you to do, here's what we need you to do. Brotherly love, sisterly love. Well done, guys.
All right, that takes us to item 9A, approval for letter of agreement with St. Mary's Food Bank.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Lewis, members of the executive team, it's a great pleasure. We've talked a little bit about this previously, but there's an agreement before you tonight, and not a lot of presentation, but we have the good fortune not only to have Mrs. Erin Bronner with us, who's our Director of Nutrition and Wellness, but also Mr. David Martinez from St. Mary's Food Bank. So I'm going to put them on the spot. I don't know how prepared they are, but just to give us a quick overview of what the program might look like and what our timetable might look like, should the board approve the agreement and us sign off to be moving forward with that program.
Definitely, we have a spot. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board and the executive team. It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. David Martinez from St. Mary's Food Bank, who we have recently joined a partnership with in hopes, with the quick approval here, that we will be starting a mobile pantry in January that will be offered to the Creighton community out of our district warehouse location. So I'd be happy to turn it over for him to speak a little bit more.
Great, thank you. Madam President, members, and executive team, thank you so much for this great opportunity. I have the great pleasure of representing St. Mary's Food Bank tonight, and specifically the partnership with your amazing food service professionals to address an area of unmet need in the community. As you are probably well aware of, too many of our kids are going to bed hungry every single day. But through unique partnerships with school districts, churches, homeless and domestic violence shelters, St. Mary's Food Bank Alliance tries to partner with such entities as Creighton to try to meet that need and ensure that kids get not only nutritious food while at school, but out of school time as well, so that They come back to school not worried about where the next meal is coming from or why is my stomach growling. They can focus on their classwork and really succeed as Creighton students. So we're really excited for this partnership. Upon approval, we'll be starting with a monthly mobile pantry out of the district office there. And this is essentially like a farmer's market. St. Mary's Food Bank Alliance has great partnerships with grocery partners, Arizona farmers and growers, and government commodity foods. So we will be distributing emergency food boxes with non-perishable food items, fresh fruits and vegetables for Creighton community, and hopefully this partnership will begin in earnest in January. Right now it's once a month, but we anticipate the community will just really rally around this idea of getting free, healthy food when at a place they're familiar with, and that partnership will continue to grow. So I am happy to answer any questions you have, but we're really excited about this specific partnership because the Creighton area is an area that we've identified as a priority target area where we hope to grow even more partnerships.
And if I could just add on to this, one of the really nice things about this is, you look for the right partners, but it's really nice when it falls into the areas where the superintendent's goals are. So this is perfectly aligned this year with the superintendent's goal for wellness options for our community. And obviously, wellness starts with those healthy meals that some of our families don't have access to. So ironic that tonight, because where this will be located is connected to the Creighton School. And we just heard from Mr. Carvajal and his team and the things they do to create a safe, nurturing, welcoming environment. And so this will just add on to that, not only for that school's community, but for all of our schools' communities.
Hi, I used to use St. Mary's a lot for my families, and it was weekly. You're gonna do it monthly, but you say you might increase. The mobile part comes in that you're not down at the central office, am I correct on that? You're not going to be on wheels?
We're not gonna be on wheels.
Okay, I was just wondering.
It'll be housed out of where the child nutrition offices is,
Right.
near the warehouse.
Are you gonna have problems with parking in there?
No, we don't believe so. We've arranged it such that they'll come into the parking lot, and we have a really nice kind of driveway that we feel
Is
pretty
there,
confident.
I got kind of confused. I was reading the contract and I'm like, forget it. Is there going to be any proof of need by the families to get these food boxes? And what will they have to do?
Sure. Yeah, Madam President, members, we try to make it as easy as possible for any family that comes to one of our food distribution partners to access food they need. It's not necessarily the proudest moment to have to come to one of our distribution sites, but because some of the product we distribute is government commodity foods, we have to meet income eligibility requirements. But our easy sign-in sheet has a table that notes the household size and the income eligibility based on federal poverty level. Based on the statistics and data of this area, we don't anticipate that there will be any issues with that. And we instruct our food distribution partners to distribute food to whomever comes and gets the food with very little restrictions above that.
Okay. And how are you going to let the community know that this is available to them for those in need?
We will definitely work with Emily and communicate this out on likely Facebook. We'll send home flyers with each of our students at the school sites, various different.
Are you choosing like the first Monday of the month, the first Wednesday? Have you decided any type of day or date?
Yeah, we are going to be doing these on Saturdays, so
Okay.
hopefully mid-January, with January 20th, I believe, is our, would be our preference to be the first date.
And I know for like dinners and things like that, you usually do 120. Beginning, what are you guesstimating? I'm not gonna hold you down to a number, but what are you guesstimating on how many food boxes and are you going to be putting out?
We are hopeful for at least a couple hundred, and that it will grow substantially after that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we're ready to be standing.
Yeah.
I will also add just on the promotion piece, Anybody who calls St. Mary's Food Bank 602-262-FOOD can provide their zip code and be directed to the nearby pantry. Anybody that calls 211, simply dialing 211 on their telephone, they can provide their zip code and be directed to that location as well. And there's a map actually on our website, stmarysfoodbank.org, that folks can enter their zip code and be directed to the nearest pantry as well.
If you want your white card back, I don't use it anymore. St. Mary's Food Bank. Being a social worker, I used to get it for families. I still have my cards.
That's old school. I like that.
Frame it, frame it.
We're gonna frame that.
It's an artifact.
Yeah. We're just happy to be able to partner, and Rick and Aaron here have been fantastic, and the setup that they have, the thoughtfulness that they have, and the commitment to providing free, fresh, nutritious food to the community is just been incredible, so we look forward to it.
Nice.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions, comments?
I move the governing board approve. Go for it.
I move.
Go for it.
Okay.
I thought you squeezed it back.
Move the governing board approve the letter of agreement between St. Mary's Food Bank and the Creighton School District.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Excellent.
Aye.
All right, that'll take us to item 10A. We need to designate a voting delegate. I thought we already did this, didn't
No, that was for the delegates assembly. This is for the officers of ASBA for the next year.
This is for the annual conference.
Of the annual
we?
conference.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the presentation.
The presentation is Thursday the 14th, and this business meeting is also the 14th in the morning.
So it should not be a conflict.
No, it should not be. And those attending are Amy, Donna, and Annette.
And Jeannie presented.
On the 14th. Yeah.
Presenting.
You are.
On there.
But it, yeah, it probably, it needs to be someone that's probably attending, right?
On there, I don't mind doing it.
Okay, so Donna, you're willing to be the voting delegate. Do we have anybody to volunteer to be the alternate?
I can be the alternate.
Okay.
Annette, are you interested at all?
I'm going on the 14th and 15th, yes.
Are you interested?
Are you interested in being our voting delegate or the alternate?
Okay.
So which do you, okay, so then let's settle it right now. Donna, do you want to be the voter?
I'll be the delegate, she can be the alternate if you want.
Okay, all right, so,
Or Amy, if it doesn't
No, it's
matter.
fine.
okay, so we need a motion then, for somebody who's got that straight.
I move the governing board designate Donna Young as the Creighton School District Governing Board's voting delegate and Annette Sexton Ruiz as an alternate and delegate its designee to represent the majority action of the board regarding such ASBA proposals which are in alignment with the district's vision, mission, and or goals.
I
Second.
second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. That brings us to future agenda items. Does anybody have a future agenda item?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.